one thing you've asked me about, Shane, is determinism.
Hmm.
So if you're interested, I can tell you kind of my thoughts on determinism.
Yeah, yeah. For those who don't know, maybe you could just give us a brief on what that is, and then you can get into your thoughts.
Sure. And um, I'll let you guys recap your thoughts. So determinism kind of talks about the idea that um, we are created and we're on a path. And some people think you can make decisions, which kind of shifts that path, where other people think um, we're all designed and everything is kind of laid out in front of you in the future.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, the extremists of that believe of determinism believe that you're in a path that you can't deviate from. Other people think it's a little more loose, but a lot of the people who believe in it believe you are kind of etched in stone. There's no free will, and we got into that idea of determinism with our first talk because we're talking about right and wrong, and there are some of the and this is not everyone who believes in determinism, but there are those people who are extremists, and I would put Sam Harris as one of those people. I've heard him talk about this before that have a different idea of punishment then for things that I would say are wrong or evil. Because in his mind, and people who think like him about determinism, they think, how can you punish someone for something that they have no control over? Which I
Right.
totally disagree with. But let us know what you're thinking about all that now.
Yeah. Brandon, any thoughts before I jump in?
I mean, my biggest thing, what you described is one of my biggest fears, actually, Shane.
Mm.
My whole thing is I have to feel like I've got some kind of control and some kind of free will when it comes to my life and my
Yeah.
decision making.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea that a path has been laid for me and that I have
Right.
absolutely no choice but to walk it to whatever end has been set by something else.
Right.
It drives me absolutely insane,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
I
a
know.
part of the not religious thing, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's hard for me to come to terms with the fact that you are not in control of your own life in any form or facet.
Right.
I can't get on board with it.
Right. And I should say a lot. Most of the people who believe in determinism do not believe in God. And then we were talking briefly the other day about how people who believe in God, such as myself, do believe in free will, and people have different ideas on free will. In my interpretation, is like God is omniscient; He sees every possible path. So there's kind of like degrees of determinism with like almost an illusion of free will. Like you can make these choices and go different paths, but in my mind, God sees all those like infinite number of paths. But that's that's getting into the intricacies of it. But
Yep.
John, where are you with all this now?
So, like I said, I think a lot about things, and I was raised in a Baptist Christian belief. So, I, as a child growing up, I fully believed in Baptist Christian beliefs and what I learned as in the Bible.
Hmm.
So, like when I was taught growing up that faith comes before belief, I'm like, all right, cool, I believe. Like you don't have to convince me. I believe this since I was born. So, like, let's bring on the faith. And so I've really struggled with that idea. Um, and so I believe the world is determined. Like your life has been determined by your circumstances.
Hmm.
I find a lot of just enjoyment looking into social science and seeing how groups of people make decisions, and you can look at an individual's decisions and how they kind of determine what's best for them, and then you look at a group and they will make decisions. The group will make decisions based on the options presented to them. So when you look at all of the options possible and then you narrow it to the um, options available to a group, I think that creates the realm of what you can determine. And that's kind of the like front door to how I view determinism.
Okay, yeah, and I see that. I just feel like people can break that mold. If we're looking at politics, there you can just to kind of look at something we can all picture. The left does seem like a monolith, and they all sort of move together, whereas the
Hmm.
right doesn't. I mean, give or take. It's hard to say. A lot of them are all spineless together, and some are not. But then you look at people who do grow up in places where they're surrounded by bad stuff. I think I even said this the first time around. And if we're talking politics, the first person that comes to mind who breaks a mold, will be someone like Thomas Sowell, who was in Harlem growing up a communist, and then found a way to the library, and got into economics and all this stuff, and realized he could break out of the mold that he saw himself stuck in. And there's countless people like that who are able
Right.
to escape that, and but of course surroundings do enslave people because they don't try, they don't see anything. Maybe it's nihilism and meaninglessness shackling them to their surroundings, and they see this is the pattern. You see generational nihilism and generational decay, something like Faulkner used to write about about the post-Civil War South, where he was kind of like showing how God was decaying amongst these people, in the way that Nietzsche would say God is dead, like the idea of God has left humans
During the Enlightenment period, right?
right. I don't know when he wrote that. That might have been after that, but that might have led to it. And this idea of he was saying, Nietzsche was saying that's a bad thing. People have since kind of remixed it into being like, he said God is dead, but it's like no, like society has removed God, and this might
Right.
be bad.
He was kind of describing a symptom.
Yes, and that's kind of what Faulkner was showing. And again, that's very location surroundings based, because he was showing look what happened to all these people after the Civil War, totally destroyed, decrepit. Reconstruction didn't work, and not so. I'm just saying that to say, to your point, a lot of those people were shackled to those surroundings and didn't get out. But there are people who are able to escape that, clearly, from all around the world throughout history, which is where I think the free will comes in, to be able to open up your eyes and be like, I can get out of this. There is a way out. There's a path I can see. And then you can say, well, maybe they were determined to make that path. You can go back and forth with this, but I see your point. I see people from where I grew up who are stuck in that pattern where their parents did the same thing. Something I think about raising kids, about generational stuff that you kind of want to remove before it gets to your kids. So it's, and that is a form of determinism, because if I'm already thinking about that, I'm thinking about how I don't want this to pass to my kids. Kind of like,
Right.
Not ancestral DNA, but sort of like that. Something that, has been learned through generations that I need to break, whatever it is. We all have our flaws, right? So yeah, I can see that, but I still see free will. So have you changed your idea of free will at all? Are you seeing anything free will, or is it just, are you mostly seeing determinism now, now that you've looked into it?
Damn, I was tracking with you until you asked me a question, and then I got all confused.
Nice. Welcome to Inverted World Live.
So,
Well, we can just say, how has your perception of this changed since looking at determinism,
if at all.
if at all?
well, the thing is I've been trying to figure out how I fit into life, right? I was born, I was taught I'm part of this greater design. So, what I'm trying to look at, what is my determined path? And if I have a determined path, do I have any influence on that? So, relating back to kind of politics and the way that humans interact, this is what I lost my train of thought. When I was how old do you think I am?
Oh man. So I'm not looking at anything, people. You're just a disembodied voice.
Right.
And while I'm thinking about that, I'm just going to shout out everyone who's joining us now from IRL. We appreciate you joining us. We've been talking about the Black Knight satellite, Oumuamua, Tesla, UFO hearings, and now we're talking about free will, determinism, right and wrong, our path in life, with our caller, Gian, who just asked me how old I think he is. And this is just based off a disembodied voice. I don't know, 37.
All right. I think that's fair. I have a very deep voice,
You're
and
you're
I talk
22.
more intellectually than people my age. I'm 26 years old.
Okay. Nice.
So I was born in 99.
Okay.
And this was at the horrend avi- event horizon of the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You were
I think
3 for
things
9/11.
have been the same since before the internet. However, with the internet, we're able to see and sense and get a perspective on things that we would never be able to conceptualize as an individual in a individual society. We're able to break borders and boundaries and look across the wall, if you will, into other societies. And since the spread of the internet, I think nothing has changed. It has only perpetuated and accelerated. And so what we see within politics is not a change, it's only an acceleration. And so I think if you kind of slow that down and you look closer, you'll see these microcosms of revolts and revolutions within small areas because of the information these people are gaining.
Yeah. You know, in a way, human nature is determined towards darkness. You know, as someone who's religious, I believe in the fall of man, but I don't think it takes religion to realize that humanity is fairly dark. But then I believe we have free will to be good, you know? And no matter how modern we might appear, we are as barbaric as we've always been. So, you know, like we're still doing crazy stuff. It's just people in suits now and different cars and glass buildings that reach into the sky. So there is a form of determinism in that regard, but I still believe there's this hope of free will throughout it to break that mold, because human nature in itself is kind of a surrounding that we're all anchored to. But I think what was I was writing down something while you were talking. You're talking about your influence, and you know it would be a tough thing for you to struggle with now, because as a determinist, if you are, I don't know if you consider yourself one, I don't believe determinists feel that they would have any influence because they are totally under the influence of determinism. So you're kind of like stuck. You are a slave to this path that you've been put on. I don't believe that. I cannot believe that. I think we are in control to a degree. Obviously, we all have our things from our life, our history, our generational stuff from all of our ancestors that we've learned about in their stories, things that inform us. But I do believe we have influence, and 100%, I really do believe like you have influence over your life and the people you can control around you, or not control around you, but influence around you, with whatever, making them think about things like this right here. You're influencing people, whether they agree with you or not, or me or not, or Brandon. We are influencing them by having this conversation in their heads now about free will versus determinism, right versus wrong, and all that stuff, which is, I think, pretty good. And you were raised Baptist, and would you say you're atheist now, agnostic?
I've tried to find a way to define my beliefs, and it's something of a mix of everything and kind of not accepting most things. So I'm just kind of going with what makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that could change, because I was militantly atheist for a long time. I never thought that would change. I thought that was my determined path. Even though it was before I knew anything about determinism, I was stuck in like, there is nothing else. But then I had this, whatever happened to me, and I can't imagine not being like this now. So I'm not saying that will happen to you. It doesn't happen to everybody, but I hope it does. But you never know. And perhaps where you're at now, looking at your life and spiritually and all that stuff around you, might inform however you morph, however you morph spiritually or not into the future. It's like thinking about people on Rumspringa who are Amish, right? They leave to kind of get a taste of the real world, and most of them come back, and that experience of freedom, if you will. From what I know, if there's any Amish listening, I'm sorry, I'm getting this wrong. I know there's not. Maybe unless they're on Rumspringa, informs their faith and their attitude towards surrounding. I believe there is a high rate of them returning from Rumspringa. I don't even know if how crazy they all go, because there's stories like, oh, they went out and partied. I don't think it gets that crazy. Maybe some of them, but you never know. You know, how you are now could inform the person you become tomorrow. It will, no matter what path you take, which again brings me back to free will. Even though there's infinite paths, and in my mind, my omniscient God can see all those paths. I still have the ability to go down whichever one I feel like taking. But that's just me.
So I have a couple different directions I could respond. One is more philosophical, one is kind of spiritual, and then one is more like experience and physics based. And I try to combine all those things. Did you guys listen to the Timcast IRL? I think it was from Friday. They had a NASA scientist and then this other, I don't know if he's a lawyer or something.
I didn't
They were
listen
talking
to it,
about all these different
but
physics and just kind of psychological.
I know Ashton, he's been on the show. I didn't hear that episode, but I'm pretty aware of what he talks about for sure.
Yeah, so he was talking about a lot of things that were theoretical, and they kind of try to combine quantum physics and general relativity, which is a fascinating topic to think about. And then when you also introduce physics, what we experience in our day-to-day world, it makes it even more fascinating. So I really, really enjoyed listening to that, and to try to like view a world the way I do. You have to be willing to accept that you're wrong constantly, and I am. If I find out new information, I'm like, hell yeah, I was wrong. Like, what else can I learn? And I think that's the mentality that drives my force. So,
well, it's
like,
good. I mean,
for what you were saying, like there's different paths I could start on, but they all come back to the same point.
I mean, I think that's good. You don't trust, like the phrase "trust the science" makes people sound like they're locked in that path of whatever the science says must be, which is completely antithetical to what science should be, where you're constantly experimenting, learning new ways to look at the same thing. That's how it should be. So, you know, that's a good thing, I think. But yeah, man, I always appreciate these conversations. Did you have any other thoughts before we go to another caller?
No. My main goal is to I want people to think, because I enjoy connecting with other people. I can think as much as I want in my head, but at a point it gets kind of redundant and I sound crazy even to myself. So I want to connect with other people to better understand myself.
Well, that's great, man. Same here, dude. I appreciate it. We appreciate the phone calls, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.